Good morning to everybody. It's not a bad morning here at Bealtaine Cottage. A little bit windy. In fact, there's quite a high wind up there. Just watching the tops of the trees. The occasional big strong gust. Sammy Bear is sleeping. Very, very slow recovery, so don't expect anything dramatic. It's going to be weeks and weeks, I think. But that's okay. Slow but steady is only a good thing, I'm sure. Oh, there's a huge big bird sat up there on the wire. So in between all the caring and feeding for my little bearkin, I'm out in the garden doing bits and bobs. Well, I say bits and bobs like this. So I've been cutting down the fuchsia. A lot of sort of maintenance now to do, which is all very enjoyable. Got lots of that beautiful orangey willow to cut back, and I might leave some of it in place for the winter and then cut it back in the early spring. I've got to find a way of getting this oak tree out of this metal watering can. It's been in there now for a long time and I need to get it into the ground. So I may have to ask someone to come and help and basically just cut the whole thing open. Any ideas from my little international community here would be gratefully received. This is another plant that I have to take up, but that's okay, that's in a plastic pot. I can quite easily get that out. There's a lovely little piece of bog oak in here which looks like a hen's head, covered with moss at the moment, but I want to get this Leucestria famosa here, this beautiful plant here. I want to get this out and into the ground. So lots and lots of things to do, and of course it's always good to stay busy. You know, when you've got other pressing things on your mind, it's good to stay busy. With a very heavy heart, I've been watching what's been happening out in California, and it's absolutely, it kind of verges on almost the unbelievable what's happened, because it's happened so fast and it's happened so horrifically. Well, people on the scene, people who have experienced it, have described it as being like, you know, hell or a nightmare, or, you know, all these people are in shock. I mean, I feel I'm in shock. I can't begin to understand how the people actually experiencing it have felt. But here's one thing which came to mind and which I really feel I've got to put out there. In my opinion, the US Army should have been deployed en masse to protect the people of the nation. Because what's happened and what continues to happen in California is a national disaster. And I'm not, like I say, like I've often said before, I'm not going into the whole debate about climate change, because you know how I feel about that. And there's no point in trying to either preach to the converted or turn the minds of the unconverted. Proselytizing is not going to change anything. But that's a little, that's a question which has come up as I've sat this morning watching a dozen or more news reports on YouTube from the California fires. Where's the army? You see, in my opinion, maybe I'm just being very naive, but I have always felt, as a Celt, and the Celts always try to defend their territory and defend their people, that the army should have been called in immediately. In fact, as soon as any wildfire breaks out and that is threatening lives, never mind property, that is threatening lives, that's when the army has a job to do in defending the nation. And because this is only going to get worse, it's not going to get better. There's not going to be a sudden improvement. I mean, even if California has masses and masses of rain, all that's going to do is cause, lots of earth slippage, land slippage, and even if there's consistent rain that's going to help heal the earth there, the problem will arise somewhere else, or similar problems, because it's not just fire, is it? It's flood and excessive drought, excessive rain, excessive wind, excessive cold. We appear to have gone into the excess. We appear to have gone into the extreme. And nature is trying to rebalance herself, and it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard. But anyway, so that was one thing that occurred to me as I was watching all the news reports. This little drain here is working well. This was cleared out in the early part of the year. So we have a constant movement of water along here, which is great, because that's going to keep the land fairly drained. So over recent days here at Bealtaine Cottage, the temperature's been going up and down a fair bit. So talking about extremes sort of comes naturally to me at the moment, because we've had extremes of temperature. One night it was almost a challenge to try to keep warm in bed, and within inside about 48 hours, another night I was kicking off the duvet and opening the window. So these are all the new challenges now which we're facing into. I love to see the water running so freely. I find that a great comfort. Another, oh look at this, isn't this gorgeous? Look at all the fungi on here. It's absolutely beautiful. It's just beautiful. Look at that. That is just so gorgeous. Just beautiful. Now, something else that I picked up on the news reports, which made me think about what I've said and written before about disasters and the human reaction to them. And It's a very optimistic note, because my mother often talked about World War II and how that was a very happy time because people came together. So in the midst of all this heartbreak and danger and turmoil and disaster and chaos, there was in the very heart of it this coming together of people. So people felt supported, and that made them feel happy, and on reflection they looked back upon it and regarded it as the happiest time of their lives. And there was quite a few interviews conducted on various American news channels this morning, and several very articulate people who were being interviewed said, yeah, I've lost my home, and I've lost everything, but I'm here helping, and it feels so good. It feels so good that all these people are coming together. And that, you see, has always been regarded, as that World War II spirit. It's people coming together. Now, when people come together, creativity starts to happen. And again, I'm looking at Britain after World War II. I mean, after World War I, there was the people were actually treated quite badly. Soldiers were left to roam the countryside as tramps. I mean, the whole thing about the tramp on the road became part of the British culture and psyche, and it was shell-shocked and incredibly damaged human beings who had fought for their country, who were left to roam, the roads of Britain with no support and no help. Well, you see, after World War II, there was a totally different energy in the people, because the people remembered what had happened to all the soldiers after World War I, and they were not about to put up with that nonsense again. And so there was a huge rebuilding programme put in place, and not just rebuilding of the country, the towns, the cities, but a rebuilding of the national spirit. And that's where you had the advent, the birth, the true birth of the National Health Service, and the true birth of the social welfare system. And before anyone says on a comment here, people abuse the welfare system, let me tell you that statistically, if you want to look for abuse, financial abuse of any system, you go to the top. You go to the top, because that's where the real financial abuse takes place. I will never forget, as long as I live, what happened in 2008 and the banking crisis. Okay? We should never forget that. So there will be a new spirit being born, will kind of rise from the ashes, and rise from the floods. And in my mind's eye, it will be a spirit of cooperation and togetherness and hope, and also to look seriously at a different way of living, a more sustainable. And I know that this word has just been bandied about by every corporate advertising agency looking to increase sales. But there will be a more sustainable approach and more importantly, regenerative approach to living. And not just regenerative in the physical sense, but regenerative in the emotional sense. Because we have been drawn so far away from all those emotions that make us the best humans that we can be. You know? We've been drawn away from that. And crisis and disaster and loss will bring us back. And you know, up until now, there's been a sort of a consensus of opinion that crisis is going to... Come on, Jack, come on. Crisis brings so much chaos that there's a breakdown in society. Well, let me tell you, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that, and it never has. That's Hollywood movies you're talking about. That's the warped minds of horror story and sci-fi horror scriptwriters. Real disaster, real chaos and heartbreak and apparent breakdown of society brings society together. That's been proved time and time again. Time and time again. And there's the postal van. I think he's coming in here. Jack, come here. Jack, come here. Oh no, fortunately he's gone past. I thought there might be a standoff there with the postal van and Jack. So there it is. And you know, I've experienced this as well, in a small way. In a small way, we all have over recent, you know, days and several weeks. This enormous outpouring of support for Sammy Bear, and you know, all that love, all that nurture, all that good energy. So you see, when it's put into this context, there is nothing to fear within the future. If anything, what Mother Earth is going to have to go through in all of this will be part of our own human experience and development. Because nothing is static, nothing stands still. We don't come to a point where a disaster happens and that's that. No, there's outcomes from everything. And you know, I know that there was quite a lot of negative outcomes from, say, Hurricane Katrina. Those disasters spelled the beginning. And people didn't see it as the beginning. They seen it as just something that happened in isolation. I think that the understanding of disasters brought on by extreme weather is now beginning to enter and change the psyche of the people. So when I was, you know, watching all those news reports this morning and feeling quite downcast for the people in California and the people of America and the people of the world, I wasn't surprised when I heard the interviews with people who were helping and what they had to say. So this is the sort of beginning of what lies ahead. And I think the outcome is going to be much, much different from what any of us expected. And I mean, certainly I've been thrown off guard over and over again for the past, couple of weeks with Sammy Bear. And so therefore I have come to an understanding that most of what happens is beyond our control. What does lie in our control is our reaction to them. How we react. And we can either rise up and become better people, or do nothing and become diminished. Well, based on historical precedents, I think we're going to rise up and become better people, and this will be a time of great change for everyone, and a time of more compassion and more love and more creativity, and all the energy of chaos to be harnessed and turned into something that will help create a future. And we can't predict what that's going to look like, but we can say that the minds of people will be changed. So on that note, just looking at the colour doesn't leave this woodland garden, does it? It stays in place the whole year. Just different tones, and over the course of the winter, of course, it becomes much more sort of fragile looking, more ethereal looking. So, today is Thursday, tomorrow is Friday. Looking forward to the weekend. Let's just tidy up this little area over here. Have a blessed day, everyone. Have a blessed day. Blessings to you all.